Hello and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who wishes his sim had discovered evidence of extraterrestrial life and earned 1 million simoleons.
Tim Longo. Are you serious?
Yeah, I alluded to some weirdness prior to the cast starting. This is for The Sims, of course. That should be clear from that intro. So this was an unfortunate series of events. I mean, it started well. Betty, who has been doing scientific research as her career, she started as like a test subject and quickly moved up. She's moved up a couple rungs. And I got this alert several sim days into play that she had discovered evidence of extraterrestrial life. It came as a pop-up. And earned 1 million simoleons. And I was like, that's amazing. I want to take a screenshot of that. And I had forgotten, I very used to just I hit the button, I get the screenshot, it's in my clipboard. I can paste it into Paint whenever. So that's what I thought I was doing. Unfortunately, with my newer Windows laptop, it no longer just does a print screen. It opens the snipping tool, which is a new Windows thing.
Yeah.
So you already know how I feel about it.
I mean, new as in, yeah, but I get you.
New since, certainly 2000 or whatever. Anyway, it's not just the print screen puts it in. It pops up a little thing where you have to pick, and it takes focus away from the Sims window. However, on my laptop, if I take focus away from the Sims window, when I go back, the screen no longer renders.
Yeah.
And I lose the game, basically. I have to kill it from the task manager.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hit this button, thinking, that'll just put it in the clipboard, instead what it did was make it so that had never happened because, of course, I don't save. I'm a console player. I never save. The game's supposed to do that.
Oh, no. So you lost time as well.
I lost, hours of play.
No.
And I'm like... one of the things that's nice about how I'm playing is that, and I didn't get the screenshot. Nothing happened out of that was good. The way I play is it's pretty reproducible because, I'm simulating something very controlled, and I'm really micromanaging and I kind of know what I'm doing on a daily basis, kind of, but it's is there this felt like an event that was random with a very low chance of happening. That's how I would do it.
Yeah.
And it's is the seed, is this a game that you can save scum, right? Basically, because the seed is generated every time you start it up or whatever. For those who don't know, random numbers on computers are based on getting a seed, and that's typically generated in some way that is not obvious. You take the current, number of microseconds that Windows has been running and you use that as your seed, or you multiply it by some value or whatever. So there's ways that people do this to generate, especially back then. Nowadays we have better ways of seeding things usually, and a lot of hardware has support to do something more complicated. But at the time it was all very whatever the programmer thought to do. And it was very common just to write, set the random seed based on the time. It's a very common thing to do. So I don't know if that's a thing. Every time the sim starts, it generates a seed. So I'll never get this back, because it was a very low probability thing. And, I just happened to have it.
Just one of the days this happens and it was random and then...
maybe it never happens again. So I don't know what's going to happen. I actually haven't caught up the number of days I had played back to that point. So I will try this coming weekend to catch up. But
that is a game changer.
Yeah,
no pun intended. I mean, that's the newbies' life would change forever.
Well, probably not the way I'm playing them. They'd probably like buy some nicer chairs.
That's what I was going to say. They'd have really nice chairs.
They'd get a really good
nicest
bed.
Wallpaper on the same walls.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get an espresso maker maybe instead of a coffee maker. But
they don't even have a coffee maker.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. I have not added a coffee maker. Well, I'm going to wait and just buy the really good, coffee maker, the ultra coffee maker. If I ever buy one, that's kind of been how I've been approaching it. It's like build up money, buy the best thing of a class if you're going to add it to the game. They did buy an oven recently to switch from the microwave, and I bought the ultra high end, like Viking style.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So you are going.
Yeah.
I'm living day by day.
Yeah, I know. Anyway,
it's pretty rough.
That was my crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. Week. I mean, we've joked, I think, in one of the episodes or theorized on one of the episodes about how they brought some of that SimCity, disasters / natural events / the universe bringing in some sort of chaotic event that changes the game up and becomes somewhat legendary, like a UFO destroying your city or whatever, right? It was super rare, but when it happens, it's very memorable. So I was wondering how they did that in this game.
Now, my other theory is that this is a thing that they've done with the tutorial family, so that if you keep playing it, this will happen. That this is just like built into their tutorial stuff, as an Easter egg. Well, not even as just like an example of here's like the limits of where this game can go in terms of weirdness. Like that could be another way. Yeah, because the couple is pretty simple otherwise. Like, they're definitely like somewhat stereotypical. We talked about that a little bit. We have an email about this as well. In terms of the sort of gender stereotypes and things like that. So I don't know if that's a way to do that. Like I'm not really sure, where it comes down. That's why I'm trying to get back up to that point, because if it happens again, I'll be like, oh, this is just meant to happen to, to this, so that'd be interesting, this couple. Yeah.
To see. Yeah. Well, I mean, if I don't know how it works either, but my guess from a design perspective is that every profession has one of those moments.
Has something, out there.
Like Dianne is heading into politics, basically.
Yeah.
And so I can assume that the version of that for
my
her
assumption is she's Dianne Feinstein.
President. Right, exactly. Yeah, maybe senator. Yeah, so...
yeah, but you're probably right. Yeah, it's probably...
Or no. Was Feinstein a senator or...
She was a senator.
Yeah. Senator, yeah. Yeah, so that, like being president, right? It's like, what are the highest aspirations if you play long enough? I kind of shudder to think what Jeff's, literally, I think his profession is called Elite Forces.
Jesus.
That's his profession. And he goes, like I said, to work every day in a Humvee, camouflage Humvee, which just, pulls up in the neighborhood. That's his carpool. So it's like, what is his end game? They're a real power
couple. I'm
well, Diane's not there yet.
I'm not sure we should be allowing Dianne to take the presidency if she happens to be married to the man who, is the Joint Chief of Staff of the Army.
Yeah, it's a dynasty. Yeah. You got to be. Yeah, but I mean,
it's too much power in one family.
But that is, I don't have to hit it now, but Dianne isn't there yet. Far from it, and that is related to one of the topics I want to talk about. But,
okay.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy. I'm impressed. That's. I did not. I mean, you alluded to something big.
Yeah.
And there's the real world aspects of that story.
Yeah.
But then there's also the wow, I did not see that coming. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Now I'm wondering what else is in this game that we'll never see. That's so out of left.
And that's, I think, a really tantalizing. That's why I think it might be a scripted thing for the tutorial, is because discovering something like that, as you're pointing out, makes a player want to really explore this game.
Find other things.
What other stuff is in there that I wouldn't think of? We've been playing chess every day. Can I become
Yeah.
the world chess champion. Is that a possible thing?
Yeah.
And you wonder, like, as a I would guess ask you as a designer, like, I read that and I think, well, maybe this was a pillar. Like, every object potentially
Has a light,
has a
has
has a
a
thing.
flow chart.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean that's the way you'd have to do it. It'd be a network of there'd be a flow for everything, and then probably some interconnectedness too. I don't know if
Right.
they. I mean, I assume that's where the franchise goes. In this game, I bet there's quite a few limitations.
Yeah, I would think
It's
so.
interesting. I was on. So as a, I didn't intend to tell the story, but as a side note, kind of related to this, to your point of exploring all your options and kind of really trying to figure out what is in the game as a exploration. Remember that persistent chip bag that I had I couldn't get rid of?
Yes, yes.
So that is a bug in the original game that I could fix if I got a patch, but I was like, oh, I'm not going to dabble with the patches.
Right.
So, but I found a forum of people who still play the original game, and there's a cheat code basically I could put in to get rid of it, which I did, and then I turned it off just for transparency's sake. But I wanted to get rid of that chip bag. So I turned it on, and it's like turn on move objects to everything and allows you to move anything anytime. And then if you pick something up, you can delete it. So that's what I did. But the interesting thing was on that forum, these people, relatively recent posts, are still playing Sims 1, like
Wow.
au natural. And it kind of made me think, why? And also, to your point, maybe they're still exploring.
Yeah.
Maybe they never got the presidential chain,
Right.
so they're like, I'm just going to figure out, I'm going to just do everything I can to be president, and then, I'm going to do everything I can to find aliens, or, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
once, obviously at this point, it's all spoiled on the internet someplace, but when it's such a sandboxy sim, I could totally see somebody, everybody has those games in the past that they loved so much that
Sure.
they
Yeah.
come back to time and time again.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole class of people who play games who kind of find their forever game, and that's just what they play now. Like,
Yeah.
especially people who are not deep into the hobby, not the so-called gamers, right? I mean, there are plenty of people who buy fewer than one game a year, who play games, right?
And they just commit to it.
Yeah. And it wouldn't surprise me to learn that it's like somebody who picked this up when they were, the kids were, out of the house or whatever, but they told them about this game that they thought they'd like. I can remember when I was a kid with the Apple II, my parents went on some trip together, and our aunt was staying with us, and she got addicted to the solitaire that was on the Apple II that we had. And it's like, you could do that with you don't need a computer. But she was hooked. I mean, she was on it all the time, like, noticeably. And she was like, I was so glad when your parents came home, because, I was making her coffee in the morning because she was too busy on the Apple II that was in our kitchen. Yeah. And, it's the sort of thing where, and she's never really, been a computer person or anything like that since. So but I kind of like, I could imagine her, getting a game like this that for whatever reason clicks. And if she had a computer run it, just playing it forever, and just being like, this is just the thing I do for an hour every morning.
Yeah. I think that's very much where, I mean, we're way off maybe topic now as I was about to say this, but I think Sims to some degree, like in 2000, I'm trying to think, what, 2000? Yeah, I think that's Farmville had not come out yet.
Mm-mm.
And so you can see where I'm going with this.
No, Farmville's more like 2005, 6.
Yeah, because there were casual games, and I think, Diner Dash, and there were web games,
right,
web browser games.
Right.
But casual games were not as hot as they became, and then eventually casual becomes mobile. And I think, things like Sims, things like Civilization, those sorts of like
certain types of flight sims as well.
Yeah, and just like this kind of progression of those games that you can play daily, and there's this sort of like constant progress incremental progress, but it's not about shooting or fighting, or it's just kind of like not mundane, but it's very matter of fact, kind of like Farmville. And then things like Farmville happen and blow up, and then mobile becomes a thing. And I'm using this example because my mom, hi mom, she doesn't listen. Uh, I don't even know where this started. It's probably my fault, but she is kind of like your aunt in that she plays mobile games on her iPad now. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the merge games or hidden object games, but it is very much that daily crossword puzzle for her now, right? Where it's just like a thing she does.
Merge
You
games, you
know,
mean like Bejeweled?
she has done some of those, but as well, match
I don't know
threes.
what you mean. Oh yeah, match three. What do you mean by a merge game? I don't know what that
Oh,
means.
merge is a genre. It's a merge game. It's where literally, as far as I can tell, I've watched her play. Um, you're just merging things, and they become bigger things.
Okay,
it's
this is
I think
not a genre I'm familiar
it's a
with.
whole subgenre, yeah, and I think a
I,
few
I've
companies
played
hit big.
something similar to that, in that it was like an alchemy thing.
Yeah,
You're
most
like
likely.
putting together concepts and finding other concepts. And
That
this
sounds
is
too
one of those.
complicated. This is literally like, I think I would describe it as maybe like a match three without any rules. You're just like putting the two red things together, and then putting the two dragons together, and then putting, you know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
But it's all based on timers because it's free to play, right? So
Right,
they're
right, right.
so they the economy of it is doing what free to play economies do. No
Right.
commentary. So anyway, my point being is that The Sims, when we talk about legacy of these games,
Yes, yes, yeah.
it's like, what is a distilled down version of The Sims that now is on mobile,
Right.
or cozy games now. Cozy games are
Sure.
pretty big.
Yeah.
They're kind of ebbing and flowing currently, but um, Animal Crossing we've played and talked about, right? It's
Yeah.
like Animal Crossing is the progenitor mobile game, really.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah.
And so
Or
it's that
some of the
thing you come back
early
to every day.
the farm simulators and things like that.
Well,
The
it's the
Meal
yeah. I mean,
Time.
one of the
Although, yeah, you're
cornerstones,
right because Animal Crossing does have like a real time clock type
you
aspect
need
as
to come
well.
and
Yeah,
weed or whatever the reasons
yeah,
are. Yeah, or hit an appointment. I mean, it's appointment based gaming, which mobile free to play mobile games are the cornerstone because they want you to log in every day, right? So they build the economy around that. And the progression system around that. I'm addicted to one myself right now, which is more crunchy, but so I get it. And The Sims is like, luckily, in The Sims world, you save the game and it's static,
right.
and then you come back and it's exactly where it was. So it's not like an MMO, but
Yeah, I'm glad they've never messed that up
yeah.
because I feel like they,
Well, there was Sims Online, which apparently did not
Oh, was
land.
that a Sims game? I
Yeah,
was thinking of
persistent.
Sim City Online.
No, Sims Online was a thing that was a. I don't know if I describe it as an MMO, but it was online multiplayer. So I
Oh,
think
okay.
there was some
Yeah,
persistence.
that one passed me by, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think it.
I was thinking of the Sim City that had like severe restrictions on city sizes and things like that because it
Yeah.
was
Right.
online. I don't remember what version of the Sim City that was, but it was like
Yeah.
a
There was
real
like a
misstep, for the
mhm.
franchise. And it
It's
feels
like
like
a
this game
reboot
hasn't had that.
product.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, a little off topic, but I still, the reason I'm trying to bring it back on the topic is because I do think Maxis, you know, as well as Firaxis and others, like some of those fundamentals, those designers went on to make mobile games,
Mm,
good mobile games, right? And kind of came into it from that direction and changed Ensemble. There are some really good developers from Ensemble that went in the mobile direction and made some amazing games. And they start trailblazing because of their RTS backgrounds
right.
into this new medium, really sub-medium of what we do. And even though Sims you save and you walk away and you come back, it's exactly the same place, or there's not a need to log in every day. As I play it, it's very um, uh, meditative. It's like I'm,
Yeah.
like you said earlier, it's like I have a thing I do every day. I have a rhythm. You're very min maxing it, I think, and optimizing it, and I'm like just like controlled chaos, barely hanging on. In fact, not hanging on now.
I'm not. I mean, I don't think of myself as min-maxing it. I'm more trying to move against the grain of acquisition that I think the game wants.
You bought the Viking stove as your first stove.
Right. But I haven't bought any of a million other things that I think.
No, that's still, you're doing a very efficient.
Right. So I'm not, version. But I didn't think of that as min-maxing. I thought of that as like, this is the thing I need. It's like.
It's okay. You can be a min-maxer. It's not a bad word.
I know okay. It's not, but it's not how I thought of it at all, like in the moment.
We never
I was thinking more of, what's Terry Pratchett's books. He's got this character, Sergeant Vimes, who talks about boots and how, a rich person buys $100 pair of boots and a poor person buys like 30 pairs of $10 boots. So a poor person is even poorer because they're constantly buying crappy stuff, right? And it wears out fast, and they're constantly replacing things because they're made very badly. And that's like it's really expensive to be poor, which is a true fact of life generally, I think. So I'm trying to counter that, and that's how I think of it. But it is probably in some way min-maxing because it's making the use of those things like makes my cooking even more effective or something like that, right? So it's really funny because I literally never considered like that's what I was doing, but that might be the effect it's having for sure.
Mechanically and systemically, I think that's what I mean. You're being patient and biding. It's not a criticism. I think it's a great way to play. You're biding your time and building up your resources so you can get the best stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, it's that success will beget more success, which to give you, like, it's funny because we're playing literally completely the opposite. Because for me, like I said, I bit off more than I can chew. 4 Sims with 2 kids is just too much. And so I'm in a downward spiral right now in various ways. But to your point about like making ends meet and, your net worth and like how much money do you have in the bank and all those sorts of things, I had to sell the kids' dollhouse to buy food.
Wow.
Yeah. They ran out of food and they're like, you should sell something. Literally, there's a pop-up that comes up and says, you should sell something. Go to the buy menu, which is funny because the tooltip is like, go to the buy menu and sell something. It's like, what? Okay, yeah, I get what you're saying, but that's a weird sentence. So I was like, well, what can I afford? What can I afford to lose that's worth quite a bit? And I admittedly probably bought the dollhouse too early, right? This is the telltale sign of a family going into debt to buy things they shouldn't buy,
right?
Living beyond your means and all of that. But it's coming into fruition in the game, right? Both of the parents work. So I have income coming in, but the scale, is just,
those kids report cards, for their day at school is going to be really bad if they go to school hungry.
It is. They both have D's right now.
Oh dear.
And going to school in, a bad mood is basically the main thing they, I think, look at about how their grades are doing.
You were living a suburban parent's nightmare.
Yeah. Everything I tried to avoid in my real life.
Oh, wow.
So it's so, but then, and to take I guess I'm here, so I'll keep going, but to take a little bit of a serious note, and I'll even say a little bit of I want to say maybe trigger warning, but like, it doesn't get super dark or anything, but Dianne is super depressed. Yeah. And there was a point where her social's 0. And so, and before I know it, the day's over, she has to go back to work. Right. So I'm like, well, if she doesn't go to work, she could get fired. So I have to send her, so these decisions are rough. It's like, what? And so I finally get one of the ghosts to come over. Yes. Ghosts. I'm
like, goats? What goats? And then I was like, oh, that's right. We had a gag last week.
That was 2 weeks ago, by the way.
Okay, sure.
Anyway, so one of the ghosts came over. I forget her name. and
Mia,
all
Mia,
all of the options that came up to converse with her were negative.
Whoa.
Yeah. So she's depressed. I finally get somebody to come over to socialize with her, and it's like insult, slap. None of them were like good because she's depressed.
Wow.
So it's like, what do I do? Like, how do I get out of this? And I know there's ways to do it. It's probably more like conversing with her family more, maybe, to get out of that hole. But I thought I was doing the right thing. And then I wanted her to go, because she's into politics now, I wanted her to go and practice,
speech in the mirror.
Speech in the mirror. I literally get a pop-up that said, let me see, I wrote it down. Shoot. Where is it? I'm too depressed to even look at myself.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what Bob said about playing chess one day. Like, I'm too depressed to play chess. Yeah.
But like, come on. That is, that's like, and I'm uncomfortably snickering at this, because it's like, wow, I did not, and we talked about this in pre-show. That leads to my final topic in this chain of, I kind of see the end, not of their lives or anything. I'm not trying to be that bad, but I can see how my particular game save is going to be either really hard to recover from or not. I'm not able to recover from it. And so it's like, what I started thinking about was like, what? And I think that's why this game never stuck with me originally. I'm like, the lose condition is super depressing.
Yeah.
Now, yes, in shooters or other action games, the lose condition is death.
Right. But its characters are immortal because there's saves. Yeah,
and it's like melodramatic, and it's like sci-fi or whatever. Like, I actually don't play a lot of military shooters because of that too, because it, like World War II games or something, it's too real. But if I'm playing Halo or something, right, it's like he's Master Chief. He's going to die a million times, and I'm not going to. So there's commentary there for sure, no doubt. But in this case, I have a suburban household that's chaotic every night because everyone's gone during the day because they're all at school and work. So the house is sitting there. And then, I just kind of can see where this is going, and it's just depressing. And I'm like, wow, what is happening with this game?
This actually, I think, ties into one of my topics a little bit, which is that I noticed this week, and I actually, while we were preparing, I did check, and it's true. They have no downtime in this game, like a weekend.
This is an interesting point. Yeah.
And it made me, I kind of had noticed it this week. Like, I'm pretty sure at this point I've played long enough that there should have been a weekend. And a lot of these sort of, of course, I'm doing something very different where I'm devoting one half of my the little Sims family to managing the house, and just kind of trying to keep a really good home for the person who's working, even though they're not earning that much. It's like, they're going to try to be there and like be complimentary. And every day she comes home and they play chess, and it's like their time where they reconnect. And then he goes and makes dinner for her because she's been working all day, and she might go kind of like read a book while he does that or whatever. Like, I'm trying to like do this, but it really limits, and that'll actually get to my next point, which is how I had a poem come to me this week about this. Not that I wrote, that I remember.
Is this a podcast first?
I think this may be a podcast first.
Okay.
But I noticed that they have no weekends, and I'm like, it's not possible to have this kind of American suburban life without a weekend, because that's when you actually can do all the house stuff. So if it's a family like yours, where it's like everybody works all day, and then they have, whatever, 2 hours in the morning, and then, whatever, 5 hours in the evening or something.
Can I interject a quick story?
Yeah, no, go ahead. I mean, it's impossible. I look at it
related to that.
It's impossible.
So I had done the fast forward feature because I wanted to see what would happen, and I also wanted to get my cycle around so I could get more money, to be honest. But they missed both of their carpools.
Oh, wow.
And because I didn't pause it in time. And so they both had a day at home. This is to your point. They both had a day at home without the kids. They were in their pajamas all day. and just doing housework and doing like chores and stuff. Now they both were at risk of losing their jobs because they didn't go to work, but it was nice.
Yeah.
To your point, it was like,
Yeah.
oh, we're just here. We have all day. We could do whatever we want, you know. And
Yeah.
so continue.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, this, you know, this kind of was making me reflect about like Bob and Betty, you know, and how they both spend their time, and the fact that it's kind of always going to be this in a certain way, which is what made me recall this poem that I think originally appeared in maybe the New Yorker or something like that. It's a poem by Kenneth Koch, I don't know, Koch, and it's called "You Want a Social Life with Friends." You want a social life with friends, a passionate love life, and as well to work hard every day. What's true is of these three, you may have two, and two can pay you dividends, but never may have three. There isn't time enough, my friends, though dawn begins, yet midnight ends, to find the time to have love, work, and friends. Michelangelo had feeling for Vittoria and the ceiling, but did he go to parties at day's end? Homer nightly went to banquets, rode all day, but had no lockets bright with pictures of his girl. I know one who loves and parties, and has done so since his 30s, but writes hardly anything at all. And so when people,
holy cow,
when people tell me, I've had people like say, you know, talk about like work-life balance and like how it's really hard to manage. And in this particular case, it was a sort of a polyamorous person. It was like, oh my God, you're really working overtime on one of those axes. And I sent this poem to her because I was like, I've never seen as good an encapsulation of how basically impossible it is to do these things, you know, and how difficult it is. And it made me reflect this, you know, playing The Sims this week of like, this is what I'm seeing with Bob and Betty.
Yeah,
is that totally. They only have the two.
Yep.
They have love and she has work, you know, and his work is the house, and now he's starting to paint. So maybe that becomes a thing for him, but it's just, it's wild, you know, it's like, you know, and it, you know, it's not nothing for a game to make you remember a poem that you read some time ago. So
it's funny because we had conversations about SimCity that I didn't anticipate as well, you know, and it's like I kind of like throw my fist at the sky and will write, you know.
darn you.
But it's interesting, that poem makes me think of another analogy. Jen, my wife, loves David Sedaris, who's a writer. Definitely somebody to look up if you don't know him, but he has an analogy he wrote in one of the books, I forget which one, where he describes that balance. He describes it as burners on a stove. And each burner, like one burner is self, one burner is companion, one burner is friendship, and one burner is work or something, right? Or self, or yes. And he just kind of, he's always said that you can never have all four burners on. You know, it's like you turn one on and it, you know, will take from the others. And even having three on, all three of them are going to be diminished, you know, and the fourth one will be off. And so I always love that analogy of seeing the balance of those things, and how, you know, if you do turn all of them up full blast, you're going to burn out, you know, you're just not going to be able to do it. So there's always this balance you're striking.
So I mean, I think what you're seeing with your character, Dianne, is that she's feeling the effects of, if you try to do all of this stuff, it's literally impossible, you know, and as a result, it's killing her in some way, you know, in a, I don't know, metaphoric way, I guess. So it's I don't know, it's interesting to see that, because, you know, these are not the sort of things I really expected to come out of The Sims, you know, which I think of as this kind of dollhouse, you know, but because it's a dollhouse where the dolls have some autonomy, you know, and have these sort of systems that are measured, you know, in a real dollhouse, you just are like, okay, now they're happy, you know, it's like, whatever, they just do whatever you want the dolls to do. And here it's very, because you're working with these systems, I'm constantly trying to make sure I find time for Bob to spend some time in front of the TV every day, because otherwise his fun meter makes it impossible for him to do anything else, and it makes him miserable by the end of the day. And then she comes home and they can't spend time together because he doesn't want to play chess because he's depressed, right? And it's like, so I'm having to manage that aspect of him, and it means there's things that are, I'm not able to do as frequently. So sure, occasionally he waters the plants, but he only waters like half of them. Then the next day he'll do the other half, and then the third day he'll like clean the shower and the toilet, et cetera. It's like, and if things come up in the meantime, that might throw all of that planning off. And it's like, well, okay, it just, it's not whatever that was going to happen today has to happen tomorrow. And again, I think it's because of the choice to not have weekends, and to balance the friction in the game around these systems to be pretty punitive. Like, it's very hard to satisfy all, 8 things at once. And, and for Bob, the one that it suffers the most is the social, which he gets to bump up a little bit every day, but it's always there kind of in the middle. Like, he's never a super satisfied sim, They've got this kind of bars for.
Oh man, that's so.
And he's only ever like 2 bars positive, whereas Betty is 3 bars positive because she's actually in better shape because she goes to work. So it's really wild.
Yeah, and it's kind of like another. Yeah, so I mean, to that point about the bars, both the mood bars and then also the. I forget what they're called, but the bars on the side for each of the categories of like which thing is low, and so you know how to kind of play.
Right.
I didn't have the context or comparison to your family, and this is the only family I played, but it's dawning on me now that having 4 Sims with all 8 of those things all the time, and it is very much simulating that chaotic kind of suburban family, you see in the movies or whatever, where it's like everyone comes home kind of roughly around the same time from school and work, and then it's just kind of like chaos, and then it's time for bed, and I'm constantly going between all 4 of them, pausing, trying to figure out what I should do, all 4 of them, and then trying to get the bars to go up. It's like, go take a shower, go to go to the bathroom, whatever it is, clean the bathroom. And so one of the reasons that I wanted to fool with the fast forward, because I wanted to just see, and I guess this kind of relates to my progression and maintenance thing. Like, I mean, you were talking about, and I think you've done, because you've been so methodical about this, you've been doing a better job at like increasing their stats or their knowledge about how to live better. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing some of that, but I just don't think I've been very successful. So if you just hit fast forward, they're just going to go through multiple days, right? And I wanted to see how they did, basically, right? Like on their own, without me micromanaging them, what would happen, And it's not good.
Yeah,
where I'm at right now, and so I don't know if that's like the quote unquote success story for the game, or it's like, are you training these Sims to basically live on their own? So they're good at everything, and then they can just take care of themselves, and so, but the maintenance versus progression topic for me is, and again, I now know I'm probably playing on hard difficulty essentially. Just the maintenance part is too much. So getting the progression part is been very hard to achieve, where they're bettering themselves. It sounds really dark, but it's like kind of they're pretty much in survival mode,
right?
They're not able to. Take
also
time.
A fair commentary of suburban life here.
Exactly. Middle class. Yeah. The making ends meet and the debt problem and whatever it is. It's. We're both speaking from a place of privilege for sure, and so we don't have the same perspectives. But, it's like, it's not that I don't want to play the game, but it's sort of like, it's sort of, I don't know. It's no pun intended, but it hits close to home in some ways too, So it's like,
Yeah.
wow, I don't know. So where I kind of wanted to bring up the comment about Will always talking about these as toys, and it's like, and the dollhouse metaphor and all that stuff. I mean, I didn't think about it until just now, but I had to sell my dollhouse in the game. So how meta is that?
That's pretty meta.
So I was like, I don't know, is it a toy? I guess it's a toy. I feel like, like you were talking about how people use their dolls in a real dollhouse and kind of impose what they want onto them. But there's also a reason that psychologists use dolls,
right,
to help help therapy. So now I'm kind of wondering, has anyone used The Sims for therapy? It's like, maybe.
You're externalizing, problems and abstracting them to a level where you can talk about them. And I wonder if like what we're seeing play out in this game is an externalization of developers' feelings about life. In these,
just like SimCity
in the 21st century. Yeah, just like SimCity, to some degree. And they put this, this kind of cutesy, that sort of 50s vibe, and
there's a dark underbelly.
Yeah, and then and like all the ad copy for the things you can buy feels very tongue in cheek, and all of that, and very light and fun. Like it's like Shiny Things Incorporated makes your whatever,
right.
Your appliance, the basketball thing is like the super dupe, basketball hoop, it's like, okay, I can almost imagine that existing, right? It's not that far to go. Like, and that's, that's kind of its own commentary as well, as like, we make these things cutesy and, make us distracted and makes us want to have the thing. And then of course you've got that maintenance cost, as you point out. Of course, you're more maintaining your Sims, but there's also like, you have all this stuff in your house. Like your house has to be bigger. It takes Sims longer to get from place to place. Like I've kept my house has stayed the same house. It's tiny.
Yeah.
I can get to everything really, really quickly because there's 3 rooms and one of those is a bathroom. And I guess technically the outside sort of counts as a room. And so it's actually easier for me to maintain that space, right? It's like, I only have some plants in the outside, but I'll notice like sometimes where it's like, oh, their room value is going down when they're in this room. Why is that? I need to make Bob do something in that room. Like the bathroom, for example, like the bathroom was causing their room to go down. I was like, oh, I haven't cleaned the toilet and the shower recently, right? And so it's things like that where I'm like, I don't
window or something.
I don't immediately know. I'm like, I don't know why this room is causing this, but it is. So I need to figure that out. Whenever they go in the bathroom, they're unhappy. There was one time where they were going to the kitchen, they were unhappy, and I could hear the flies, and I like, oh, look, the trash, like that throws everything off in that room, et cetera. So,
it's the ultimate plate spinning game in a way. It's such a fascinating thing. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to go now. I'm infatuated with this sort of concept of. Oh, by the way, I had a pop-up that come up. Did you know that love can be lucrative?
I don't know if I've ever told you about my side hustle, Tim.
That's what the pop-up said, and what they meant was, if you form a relationship with somebody, and they're the last. It says this in the tooltip, so I didn't look this up. And they're the last person in their household. So, like, you fall in love with somebody, and they're, a bachelor or widowed. I don't know, widower. Their net worth will be combined with yours.
Okay.
And so they're kind of like, if you want to increase your net worth, you should fall in love. It was just the weirdest. Wow. And I don't know if that came up because I'm so strapped for money all the time. Or what it is, but it was just like such a.
I thought it was going to be they'll die and you'll get they'll leave it to you.
No, well, I mean, that's not how I read it. At least, I mean, we can find the exact wording probably online. But yeah, it was just like they were basically encouraging, you know, letting you know that building a relationship with somebody, getting married, or having somebody move in with you will increase, will be lucrative for you, which is such a weird,
Yeah.
a weird concept, a bit icky. Also reinforces some of my own criticism about like what is the metric for success in the game. The weird, but then the other stuff that I'm imposing upon it myself, which isn't fair to them because it could have just come up randomly as well. Because I don't remember any action happening that I did that would cause this to come up. But like, I have a family, married, couple with two kids.
Well,
is like,
do they ever get time together where they can improve their relationship? Jeff and.
but the solution isn't to go fall in love with somebody else.
Well,
is
no,
it?
I know that, Tim.
Yeah.
But what I'm wondering is if like their relationship has kind of fallen because they never do those things, because I think those things erode right over time.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Yeah, but then I would be.
So that's why it's like you should look yonder, because
then I would prefer a tooltip that says Sims need time together. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's like it goes back to that. What if this was a designed tooltip for due to some balancing and tuning? Then they are making a commentary as a design decision, unless it was completely random and they were just letting me know in case I'm a bachelor. But if it wasn't, then that's a design decision that they're making to share a certain commentary, right?
Yeah,
that love can be lucrative.
Well, and I think we need to, and this will actually come up in some reader mail later. We just have one email this week, but like when we talk about these games, we have to basically assume everything that happens in there is deliberate, right? You can't, as any kind of critic, you have to assume, this was meant, right?
It's
otherwise, yeah, exactly. Even things that have sort of random elements in them, you have to assume, it was meant to happen at least sometimes. So, right, because even if it's random, so there's choices being made there, and we're just reacting to our feelings about, the work that we're examining. But we'll get back to that later. It's really funny because I'm like, well, we can definitely talk to some of the other topics we had. But they feel very, pedestrian against the sort of metaphor, moral, etc., and poetry questions we've been bringing up. But maybe we should at least tackle one briefly and see where it gets us. I was thinking maybe the choice of 3D, which was something that you had mentioned last week and we had not gotten to.
It's I don't know how much there is to talk about there, but and some of it was of the era, but we coming on, we didn't just play SimCity 2000, but that was the other sim game we played. And sprite and isometric, like this is an isometric game. Some things are sprites, the Sims themselves, and some of I'm not even sure many of the other objects are. I feel like just the Sims are 3D, maybe. I mean, them getting into bed is hilarious.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've watched that, but it's like they have this very awkward animation, and
where they spin and clothes change.
Do. Yeah, well, no, not that, but them, like the physical part of them getting into the covers.
Oh yeah, is
like they're using clipping to kind of because that's a 2D element, I think, the bed.
Maybe parts of it. Yeah, it's a little weird what they're doing there because it feels like they're turning off the body. Or maybe the animation of the body is really strange where it
it's something's, you just watch it closely next time. Okay. And it's just very, so it's sort of like, I'm
usually managing the other sim because I'm like, well, they're going to bed, so I don't have to worry about them. And I'm like,
fair enough.
Somebody else is cleaning up the kitchen or whatever at that point. Yeah.
I'm watching this.
Well, I do often see them in the morning, but that's kind of a different problem. And actually, now that you mention it, there is something strange about that as well. It's probably not as weird as the other one, though, for sure. But I do like how they will kind of get up and kind of stumble around a little bit, like like they don't want to be up, no matter how much sleep and energy they have. It's like it's very comical of like, oh my god, another day. Like I gotta, I don't really want to be up, but I have to be up. So
yeah, it's just more of specifically the Sims like themselves because it's an isometric game. And like for instance, when they use the phone, they attach the phone object to their hand. It's a 3D hand, right? Polygonal hand. I don't think the phone is polygonal. If it is, I don't. I'm really not. I don't know if many of the objects are really polygonal in any way. You can tell the texturing on the Sims themselves too. So it's this weird hybrid. I guess you could say, ironically, similar to some shooters of the time and stuff too, where you have that kind of like still that transition between sprites and fully polygonal everything. But anyway, it's just an odd development choice that I'm wondering where it came from, because I don't from an authoring standpoint, it probably saves them a lot, right? Because they can animate the rigs, and it's a lot more modular and procedural in that way, as far as like, whatever, IK or attachments and stuff. And if you had to do everything in sprites, then that's a lot of artwork you're creating for all the different scenarios, right? Like Diablo is a game we played that we probably talked about this, right? Where they rendered in 3D and then made 2D sprites for all 4 directions. So when you're, you know what I mean, or 8 directions, I guess. Yeah. So, but here the characters are polygonal, like Quake or something, right? So it's like, I don't know. It's just, and for me, maybe I'm way overthinking it and too in the weeds, but for me, it stands out. And maybe it's just because of 2000, that definitely was a transition when we were all trying to figure out how, we probably talked about this with Tomb Raider and Mario 64 as well, but, we're all trying to figure things out. Yeah, it just kind of dawned on me of like, why, like what's the development purpose behind that when sprites could have done it just as well. But
well, I wonder. I mean, I think that it was probably easier to animate the other thing. So what I'm seeing I was actually looking this up while you were talking. It's not entirely clear because it doesn't actually. It says it uses a mixture of 3D and 2D. But what it says is that the objects, like the only thing that's 3D are the characters. Right. But the objects, it says, are pre-rendered. Instead of saying sprites, it says they're pre-rendered, which makes me wonder if they render it when placed. And then it is a sprite, right?
I would take that as just like the same Diablo technique where they pre-rendered them and then turn them into sprites, so they look shiny. Maybe. Yeah, right. Maybe. Like the fridge looks really good, but it's because it was pre-rendered high res in Studio Max or something.
Right. And then
they made directions.
Yeah. Maybe it's all just sprites in the data. Be curious to look at the mod tools and kind of come up with that. That's a good point. Yeah. Because of the modding. Yeah, I think if you're going to have 3D characters, I do think because the characters animate a lot, you actually want them to be 3D, right? So
would have been a lot of work to do in sprites,
maybe not even possible, especially given their modding goals, right? That they could add objects and the way the objects work and all of that stuff. I think you would have to. And
the variety of what they can do.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'll keep using Diablo as a touchstone because that was a pre-rendered sprite situation, and the animation of the characters is very stilted, right? And you can very much tell that it's just frames, right?
Right.
Their walk cycle is just, So I can intellectually can understand maybe how they got there, but I just wanted to point it out as a really interesting kind of time capsule in the year 2000 of this being a question, that everyone was going through.
Well, I don't think that if you had a house with tons of stuff in it, they could have rendered it in 3D, so it's like they had to do something to make that possible, which meant
Yeah.
which meant because you always have to think about things like that, of like the worst case, right? Of like, well, what if somebody's got every object? They've got a super house, right, with everything. And it's like, well, that's never going to render in 3D. So we have to do it as sprites at that
Yeah.
point. Interesting note too, they describe this as dimetric, where two of the axes are foreshortened equally and the other one is not, which I didn't notice, but that's actually true of most games. They're not really isometric, they're dimetric. But nobody says that. I just thought that
Yeah.
while I was looking at the Wikipedia page. I was like, oh yeah, I guess that's true. No, but literally nobody says that, but that is a true thing. Well, we will talk more about, I think, next week, the object technology that we just kind of alluded to, and then some other things that they did that I think really promoted this game's success and that we should talk about further, like being able to share your stories online and things like that. But before we go, let us turn quickly to a piece of email, which I will embellish upon a little bit because there was a follow-up email that I did not see copy into there. So I'll just read out part of that after you read the original email.
All right. Subject is simulation versus sim. From Michael. Hi. Every sim has an inherent personality that determines how they're likely to respond to any given situation. Given that, isn't it possible that most of the gender normative behavior you noticed was simply the default characters, who appear to be made in the image of stereotypical sitcom families, acting out their personalities, rather than anything baked into the simulation itself? The fairly detailed SimWiki page for personality makes no mention of gender or sex. Unfortunately, I don't have access to Sims 1 because EA weirdly doesn't sell it. I agree, it's weird that it isn't available. Despite offering games as old as Wing Commander on their service, but I suspect that if you were to make a custom Robin and Elliot newbie with swapped personalities, zodiac signs, you would get the opposite result. Just something to think about. Thanks again for the cast. Thanks, Michael. I will admit I'm not following, so you'll have to explain to me.
So what he's and there was actually a follow-up where he says, because we had talked about Bob with the toilet and how he won't flush it or wash his hands or whatever. He says, as for Bob using the toilet, it kind of plays into the question I'm posing. Is that the animation for all male characters using the toilet, or just Bob, considering he has a neatness of 3, whereas Betty has a neatness of 6? And then he kind of goes in more that neat Sims like to clean. If you have a higher neatness, you're more likely to do things automatically than lower neatness characters. So, and then he does say that the stock characters definitely appear to have a bias towards gender normativity, but he thinks we should experiment with some custom characters. Yeah, I think so. And this I kind of alluded to earlier. We're kind of playing the game, as we find it, and I absolutely agree that it's very likely that it is possible to completely swap, these aspects of these characters so that that the female Sims behave like the male Sims do, and vice versa. I think in the gender normativity sort of conversation, which was not super long, but that we did touch on in the very first episode, is like, well, yeah, but as presented, all the characters you start with, if you don't go build your own, do that, right? They are following these sort of stereotypes, and and I kind of actually want to like step back and say, like, as I was mentioning earlier, like, we're playing the game as we find it. We're also taking it with our 2024 lens, and and things like that. And furthermore, it's like, and I can't remember, I think there was Anita Sarkeesian talked about, like, but it may not have been her, but somebody kind of in that era of discussion and criticism of saying, like, you can still like problematic things, and it's just, you have to address the problematic aspects, and kind of like, we're still enjoying this game, or at least I am, even though it has these sort of dark aspects or whatever. I like, whatever, slasher movies, or thriller novels, or and those things have problematic aspects. It doesn't mean that they're not something we can enjoy, and even celebrate, but there's still value, I think, in calling out things where we're like, well, I don't know about that. Like, is this aspect, the aspect of slasher films where all the victims are young teenagers just being teenagers, it's kind of gross, right? It's like, you get why it is that way, but it's also, you're like, ugh, I don't know, it's like, it's one of these genre norms that you're like, yeah, kind of icky, like, and we should just say, yeah, that's kind of icky. I still like them, but that's kind of icky, like, and maybe that's something I have to address with myself at some point, but we can still enjoy them. And I think it's fine to just kind of say, yeah, you know what, this is weird, this is a weird choice that we make, in how we present games or whatever, like, I don't know. That's kind of my thoughts on that. I don't know what else you have on it, maybe.
No, I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head for me in that most people are going to jump into this game with probably the lowest friction approach.
Yeah.
And that is using the houses provided and using the families provided. And that's what both of it, and you did a little bit of a weird approach, but, for me, I chose, the house with a certain, and family with a certain, kind of rough net worth, I guess, and size, and just kind of went for it, right? So they gave me what, like, I didn't choose that Bob works for elite forces. That was given to him. Right. But to Michael's point, I do think before next session, I am going to fool around with creating, like, I don't want to give up on my family yet. It's just so depressing to think about. But I do want to fool around with another, at least one sim. Maybe that's what I'll do. I'll do an extreme opposite. I'll just do one sim and create them from scratch, and see what that process is like. Because I didn't use the sim creator tool at all. As an aside to your point about loving things critically, not meant to be a plug. I don't think I've talked about it very much on the podcast, but my wife and I have another podcast that we do that has a very tiny audience, if any.
The way that you structured that sounded like I was your wife. I just want to clear up that I am not his wife.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, that's not what I meant.
I have another podcast with my wife, I think is what you meant to say.
I have another podcast. Yeah, so that was probably bad grammar. But I have another podcast with my wife where we are rewatching Northern Exposure. Actually, it's now streaming on Amazon for the first time. So we started before it was available streaming. So we're watching on European DVDs because it has the original music. Long story. But the reason I'm bringing it up is we loved that show when we were first getting together and when we were younger. And one of the reasons why we moved to the Pacific Northwest, to be honest. But it is a problematic show in many, many ways. Every single episode. But we talk about it on the episodes when we do our recap or whatever, right? Or, we still love the show, and it still, makes us cry every time we watch it almost. But that era was not, they did not, everyone has always put that show up on a pedestal as this trailblazing show, especially for Indigenous representation. But, they just missed the mark on how they were doing it. Yeah. But back then, we're like, well, this is amazing. We would never see this on TV. And we hadn't. Right. And now you're watching it now and you're like, oh,
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I, of course, whenever you're watching something, especially things that are older and that, like, we're also just different people than we were then, and, of course, we've grown, and like, and there has to be room for creators to grow as well, and like for the culture to move on. So it still was a very, these things are still big step forwards. And I think actually in that first episode about The Sims, I even credited them with like they listened to their audience, and things were possible in The Sims, if not expressly talked about, that were not possible, in a lot of other sorts of games at the time, and that I really credit them with that. And I think it led to them doing much more, interesting and better representative things with the series. I just playing the game as we find it, I sort of am like, yeah, you know what, this, jumping in and everything's super, whatever, when you jump in is kind of, definitely is something noticeable. And I don't know that they would do it the same way today. And, maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't, start to say. It certainly didn't hold them back, I would say. But every game I've ever worked on, I definitely go back and I'm like, yeah, I'd probably do that differently. I mean, whether it's, anything. So, even code, I look at the Starfighter games and I think, boy, I wish I knew what I was doing when it comes to those flight models, for example. Still pretty happy with the AI in general. But the flight models, oof, rough stuff. Did not know how to do that at the time. Thank you for that email sent to devgameclub@gmail.com. And we'd love to get your emails. We also love to get your reviews. Haven't had one in a minute. Love to see them and read them on the air again. We get the iOS ones, the ones in the podcast app. But if you have some other place where you review things, shoot us a mail. Let us know. Maybe just send it to us so we can read it out. We enjoy responding to those as well. You can find us on the web. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com, on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram at devgameclub. And of course, my friend here is twitching at twitch.tv/
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
And speaking of at the end, a little discussion afterwards, after the outro music runs, of something that happened on that Twitch TV stream. So stick around if you're into that. We have a fan-run Discord, and the link for that is in the show notes. It's a fun hang. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast, Aaron Evers, and our logo, that Discord, our merch store, are all by Mark Garcia. Thank you, Mark. Have fun remembering to water your plants this week, and good night.
Good night. Thanks for the reminder.
Okay, so I need to hear. I've watched this fight, so we're going to discuss it for those who have not had a chance to check out the VOD. But please regale me with what happened with this fight with Ultros in Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah. So actually, I forgot. I should have prepared better, but it's actually was with the character that comes in after Ultros, which is this. Yeah, so Bio, so a little bit of
Typhon, I think.
Typhon, like yeah, or something like that, yeah. So Bio, hello, Bio, who's a big fan of Final Fantasy VI. Many of you are, Kaon, others, and are really experts at the game, I think, and have played it many times and have a lot of good opinions about it. So Bio specifically said we must talk about this on air because it was such a weird anomaly. And it just goes to show that a game, however many years old that it is, I forgot, but quite old, can still that is this good, and this wide ranging as far as how you can play it is still surprising uber fans like them. Where I had something happen accidentally that I'm about to describe, not to be dramatic, that had them, I guess, rolling on the floor laughing and had, had not anticipated or maybe even seen before. So I shifted my approach, a little bit of, description of how we got here. I shifted my approach to rather, because I'm playing on the 4X in the remaster, which is a wonderful remaster, by the way. They did in Unity, of all things. I don't know if you knew that, Brett, but they rebuilt.
I did actually hear that, yeah.
I cannot believe it. I just cannot believe it. They rebuilt the game in Unity, and it's like beautiful. Anyway, so rather than min-maxing as I would normally do and taking some of the like Sabin or some of the normal characters that are very OP, especially in 4X, and just like do the obvious thing. Halfway through, I decided to shift.
4X, for those who are wondering what he's talking about, is that there's a 4X multiplier on the experience you get, so you level way quicker, so that the game it gets very much easier very quickly.
Yeah. So I'm way over leveled. I have way too much money. It's basically making the game very, very easy for me, but I just don't think I'd ever finish it if I didn't do this. And we're playing through it, and I'm still enjoying it. But, I'm not hitting those sort of hardcore difficult until now battles. Although I did find this apparently rare beast on an island that wiped me out. So I'm definitely not ready for that character. Anyway, I'm on my way to the floating island, about to blow up the world. Ultros shows up again. I forget if this is the last time. This is like the third time, though. And after that, this friend of his, as he jokes, Typhon, shows up. And it's this creature that we're in the air, we're in the airship, and we're flying around. It's very dramatic. I think he's fire-based.
He is fire-based, for sure.
Fire heals him. But I've decided to go with basically all sidekick characters. So I have Gao, I have Mog, and I have Realm. And I plan to get either the Mime character I've heard a little bit about, but don't have any idea what that's all about, or the Yeti. I feel like that party will be glorious. But I'm not taking any main characters. So I have all these side characters that all have these weird mechanics. And unbeknownst to me, because I'm playing on 4X, I didn't realize that with specifically Mog and Gao, the way that they work is once you order them, especially with Gao, once you order him to rage, he keeps raging and you lose control over him, basically, until the battle's over. But because I'm on 4X, my battles are over like after the first turn usually.
Right. So you rage with him, and he's going to do this one attack as many, forever that you pick. It's just that forever for you in these other battles, these random battles, are one attack. So you've never actually seen this thing happen.
I've never seen this. I didn't realize that mechanic was a thing. Apparently you can hit him yourself with your own party members and knock him out of it. But he's really, for me right now, because he's so high level, it gets really hard to hit him with anybody. But I also only have Realm because Mog also does apparently sort of this auto dance thing. Mog's my favorite character. And so I have these two characters fighting this. So what ends up happening is I choose Bomb for Gao. I rage him. And apparently fire also heals him.
Yeah.
So it's
probably some equipment you have or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's because I chose Bomb that.
Yeah, that's also.
You get the aspect of the. You get some of the aspect of the enemy that you took the power from. Anyway, so basically, I got into this loop, and everyone was dumbfounded, including myself, where I was like, "Oh, is this an A bug? I can't. I have to restart." And Calamity was on too, and he's convinced that it was the best thing, and that there's no problem with it. And I was like, I don't know, but luckily I did. You did the math on it, I think, a little bit, and it was just a matter of time. But so it's technically not an A bug, but I think in a normal setting, I probably would have had to restart a load, which isn't good. You don't want people to have to do that. But basically, what ended up happening is Typhon and Gao, both automated creatures that I could not control myself, were just healing each other. Mm-hmm. Fighting, healing. Mog was doing his best to jump in there and dancing and falling flat on his face, and Realm's like, what the heck is going on here? She's trying to knock Gao out of it, and he's blocking, and she's trying to do whatever she can, but she doesn't know what she got herself into with this party. I'm sorry, Realm. It's a bad setup. And in this particular part of the game, you only have 3 characters. whole other hilarious thing where I wasn't actually reading the screen.
You weren't reading the screen. You put
like,
4 characters
why
in, it
isn't
wouldn't
this
accept it, and you're like, what's going on? That one, I looked at that and I was like, that's actually pretty unforgivable. You could just put an X over the 4th box, like it's so strange.
It's so, it was like, and I'm just was so hardwired to pick 4 characters. There's 4 slots, so I was like, well, I'm going to fill the slots. But you know me, I'm notorious for not reading things. So they got in this endless loop, and luckily I think I had enough control over Mog where I interjected one of his dances, which I think was the water one, which was obviously probably good in this case, the bubble dance, whatever it was, the undersea one, which luckily I did go get, thanks to Bio and others. And so, like you said, he had a certain amount of hit points. Gao was healing him every time.
Yeah.
And Gao was never going to go down either because Typhon was healing him. And luckily, over time, we chipped away through the math, and Mog eventually, on his own, not by my own doing, on his own, because occasionally Mog would do something that would actually mess things up.
Yeah, but the reason for that I can sort of explain, because I watched it knowing something weird was going to happen. There were a couple of things that happened in this fight that were particularly amusing. One was that you had done this with Gao once, and then Gao got knocked out somehow. Maybe you raged with some other ability, and you raised him, and you did the same thing again with Gao. So
but I didn't understand.
You didn't know. You hadn't realized yet what was happening, right? Because the only difference is like the numbers change color, right? If you're healing versus not. So like I could see in the moment, not even realizing what was going on. So that was one thing that happened.
You can see in my face, like I am very confused. Like they were actually trying to describe to me why this was happening.
Yeah.
And I was still like, no, I don't get it. I don't understand at all what's going on.
It was very good. And then the other thing was that you were trying to take out Gao by hitting him with Realms, whatever, Thunder ability or something like that. He was blocking a lot, but even when he wouldn't, and he would take some damage, what Mog will do with the dance is he's choosing what he thinks is the best thing to do.
So he's healing Gao.
And so he would heal Gao at that point, even if, because the amount that Typhon was doing, because you guys are, way leveled, wasn't really all that much. It wasn't enough to recover from the lightning damage if you kind of consistently applied it. You would have been able to take Gao out quickly, except for Mog jumping in, being like, oh no, one of my friends is hurt. I've got to heal him. And you probably would have won earlier with Mog dancing, except that he fell a lot in one particular section. He just kept not landing any attack. He'd go to do this bubble dance thing. He sometimes picked something else, which was way less effective. But basically, he was doing 3 or 4 times as much damage with his bubble attack than Gao was healing. Gao was doing like 1,500 points of healing, 1,700 points of healing or something. And
so it was only a matter of time.
It was only a matter of time, as long as you didn't damage Gao, because anytime you damage Gao, it was going to basically give Gao more time. Because Mog was going to
I was making it worse.
You were making it worse when you were trying to knock Gao out of this and then sometimes Mog was doing some other attack which was not doing nearly enough damage. It's 1,000 or something. It was a very strange little engine thing.
It's just so interesting that, because again, I've talked about it on the stream quite a bit. We talked about it when we played the game on the cast. And I know that every Final Fantasy game does this to some degree, but I feel like this one had really nailed it, this concept of every character being very special.
Right.
And, there's the testing of this game must have been a nightmare. I don't, Square probably still is discovering things. We're clearly still discovering things that can happen like this. But the fact that I can take these 3 characters to the end of the big chapter ending, and have weird stuff like this happen because they're all so weird and unique and do their own thing. But part of it is because I don't understand them that well too, because I've just started playing them really.
And they're pretty leveled up because of the multiplier on the experience. Like,
Yeah,
it would have been hard for this to happen in the original game
that would have
because
wiped.
who's gonna like level them that much with, you know, and without ever going to the story. I mean, sure, there's some people out there, but of course, those people who are trying to min-max characters are probably not going into this battle with Gao. And
These
you know,
three.
like, it's a very specific thing to try. You know, it's the sort of thing that you just like. I can imagine going back through it and it's like, I wonder if I can beat this fight with Gao and, you know, whoever.
But if you know the game,
super leveled, like, is like another step. You know, like that.
Yeah, right.
I think a lot of players would not reach for because, you know, why would you? Like, you're just trying this weird thing this time.
Right. Well, and also, like, if you know the game that well, unlike myself, and you're even at this level legally, you know, because 4X isn't really, you know, basically this side of a cheat. You're gonna know not to use bomb on Typhon. You know,
right.
Like, you're gonna know some of those fundamentals.
Yes,
which
true.
He is a fire monster, so I should have. He's not red per se, but I should have saw that coming. I didn't even think about it. I used a bomb on a bomb. You know, it's like, it's ridiculous. Yeah. But I just love, you know, I have this painter. I have apparently the only Moogle that you can play in the whole series, which is
I think that's true. Yeah,
I asked on, and I think it was confirmed. But tell us if we're wrong. And then, you know, the child of the Veldt, or whatever it's called, the child of the wilderness. You know, these just like the most. So I'm really happy that this happened, to be honest. But I was dumbfounded.
You were. It is a very funny bit of stream to watch because you're like, you were very like, I don't understand what is happening.
I was frozen. I was like, I have no idea what to do.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and I could tell everyone on stream, well, at least, you know, the bows of the world, they have all the tools they need to figure this out, but I don't. You know, they were just yelling at their monitors, probably, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, it was very funny. It's not finding Cloud in Final Fantasy Tactics, but it was.
It's not going to Vietnam, man.
Oh my God, it's not realizing on air that they were using Apocalypse Now references, which is like the weirdest thing I've ever heard. So anyway, yeah, it's,
you know, you got to come to here for that kind of esoterica, because, you know, I think a lot of people out there who play games are not going to be like, oh, wait a minute, this is all to do with this movie from the 70s.
Yeah, and it's irrefutable. There's no other thing it could be.
Yeah.
You can't have a tiger and Valkyrie
and the bridge and the Valkyrie.
It's like, no, there's only one.
And napalm.
Yeah, exactly. There's no other explanation. So funny. Anyway, speaking of which, I guess I'm going to stream.
You're going to go and stream some of that tonight. That is that's our little outro bit about Final Fantasy VI. Have fun going off there and trying whatever other crazy stuff.
I said after that happened, I was like, okay, this isn't going to work. I can't do this again. And they're like, no, you have to keep.
You have to always do this.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going to happen now. Because, you know, Gao has so many, because I've gotten so many abilities for him from all of the different enemies. I don't know that matrix. I'm just going to be picking random stuff and seeing what happens. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
All right. Well, good luck.
Yep.